Okay, everybody, we're back. Last video left off on slide 21. We're gonna pick up here on slide 22. See if we can get through some of these slides here. The movements. This is something I feel that you can kind of read through on your own. Some things to point out. Notice that we can go into flexion approximately 80 degrees, but we can only extend about 20 to 30 degrees, which really alludes back to the previous video where we were talking about how we have so much more ligament support posteriorly, and it's because we have such a big range of motion going into flexion. As we scroll down through the different slides over here, these are basic movements. And as we look at the muscles, here are some individual muscles that you can review. I want to stop here at the muscles of the thorax. So I mentioned in an earlier video, the earlier slides, that dominantly breathing at rest is done just by the diaphragm muscle. So you can kind of see this image here with the diaphragm muscle, how it can cup itself up into the thoracic cavity, and as it contracts, it's literally pulling down, and by pulling down, it creates this drop in pressure of thoracic cavity, and that pulls air in for inhalation. And then as the diaphragm recoils back into its resting position, it forces air out for expiration. So at rest, the majority of breathing is done with the diaphragm. But what I want to focus on here are these accessory motions. So I'm going to make this a little larger so we can see this. Notice how all the muscles that have origins and insertions in a position to expand the rib cage are here on the left, and these are muscles that we use to breathe in: sternocleidomastoid, scalenes, external intercostals, and diaphragm. And then on the right hand side, these are muscles to force air out. So internal intercostals, notice it's a little different between right and left. And then we've got mainly your abdominal muscles, so external oblique, internal abdominal oblique, transverse abdominis, rectus abdominis. And you can just give this a try at your seat as you're watching this video. Just place your hands on your abdominal muscles and try to force air out of your lungs, and you'll feel those abs start to contract in order to do that. So what we've got here are accessory muscles to help us ventilate. Remember, ventilation is literally movement of air. So the muscles that pull air in are here on the left. Muscles that force air out are over here on the right. So if you were to go out and run sprints or run up a flight of stairs and you need to increase your ventilation, these are the muscles used above and beyond the diaphragm muscle. Okay, so I have one more topic I really want to stress on, and that is here with the erector spinae muscles. Your erector spinae muscles are divided into three muscles: iliocostalis, longissimus, and spinalis. Those three individual muscles make up erector spinae. Erector spinae are primarily type 1 fibers or postural fibers, slow twitch fibers. We use these a lot just to stand upright every day. The reason I want to point this out is on slide 38, we have a phenomenon here called lumbar flexion relaxation phenomenon. So you could look up some articles on this if you're interested in it. Lumbar flexion relaxation . So what happens here with this is, if we look at the EMG activity, when you're standing, the erector spinae is firing. And as we go into slight flexion, the erector spinae is firing eccentrically. So as we go from this position to this position, erector spinae is lengthening while producing force. So we consider that an eccentric contraction. But notice when you get somewhere about halfway, so we say about halfway into trunk flexion, the erector spinae muscles cut out, meaning they are no longer contributing to the stability of the spine in this position. That becomes an issue because now in this postural situation, erector spinae, it cuts out, and that essentially leaves all of the force on the very small muscles of the spine, the intervertebral discs, and the connective tissue being the ligaments of the spine. And this is typically where an individual is going to cause some type of a back problem, and that's why a lot of their back problems are those small intricate muscles of the spine, because the erector spinae just cuts out in this position. So we call that your lumbar flexion relaxation phenomenon. So it's quite important, and this is a huge reason why you always hear people say lift with your legs, not with your back. When the trunk gets in this unsafe flexed position, a huge player of dynamic stability, being the erector spinae, it literally cuts out. When we say it cuts out about halfway into trunk flexion. The reason we say about halfway is it's different for everybody, and it actually depends on what you've been doing throughout the day. So there's a really neat study that used individuals who literally just sat at their desk for an extended period of time. It was about 4 hours. After they sat at their desk for 4 hours, which mimicked a desk job before or after lunch, they put the EMG on their erector spinae, had them go into flexion, and measured the joint position at which erector spinae cut out. And then, a few weeks later, after a washout period, the same individuals came back and they were asked to be active, just to walk and stand and be active for 4 hours. And then they went through the same procedure of putting on the EMG electrodes and go into trunk flexion to see where erector spinae cuts out. As you could probably guess, the inactive individuals had their erector spinae cut out sooner. The active individuals, it stayed active longer into trunk flexion, thus providing more protection. So it's a huge advocate to definitely remain active and maintain good posture. Okay, so as we progress through the future slides here, you can read through these on your own, and starting at slide 47, here are your agonist slides. So 47 through 54, these are the slides that you will use to create a study guide in order to complete the movement analysis.